Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. One sec. I'm going to see if I can fix my lighting a little. So I think maybe we'll just give folks another minute or two. Everybody is running from meetings, and then we can jump in and get started in like maybe 2 minutes. Right, I think why don't we go ahead and get started, and if other people can join, they can join at any point. So thanks for coming. My hope is that this can be really more of a conversation. I put together a few slides, but I don't really want to talk the whole time. And I think, and I said this before, Mary named this Mastermind series, and I thought, oh no, like I'm not a mastermind, but I think this group is the mastermind. So hopefully we can all learn from each other, because I know that you guys all have a lot of good stuff that you're probably working on that you can share. So please share, jump in at any point, and please don't make me talk the whole time. So to start, actually, since there's only a few of us, I would love for everyone that's willing and comfortable to just say who you are, and if you want to say a little bit about either where you work or the type of events that you're working on, or if you came here today with a specific question or something that you wanted to cover, that would be great. Can start. I'm Lauren Stefano. I currently am the director of customer marketing at WordPress VIP. So we're doing enterprise WordPress hosting. Right. And if there's no volunteers, then I will just call on people. And I'll just go in the order that you guys are on my screen. So Bria, I think you are next.
Hi, hello. My name is Bria Jones. I'm a customer marketing manager with Manhattan Associates. We are a supply chain software company, and I am a team of one managing all things customer marketing, which also includes our executive engagement strategy, which includes our high-end events. So I'm really here to happy to share kind of what we're doing, take some notes, see what other things we're working with other teams. So just here to listen and chime in when I can. Thanks for hosting, by the way, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think many of us are, if not a team of one, a very small team. So definitely feel you on the doing lots of things, and events is only one of them. Let's see, Cassie, you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Cassie Stevenson. I've led customer advocacy at 3 different companies, including running the cabs at 2 of them. And that's really why I was interested in the topic today. It's always kind of tough to know if you're doing it high level enough and just where that fine line is between honoring the budget of the company while making it kind of worth their while and at the level of what they're seeing from other vendors. And I'm actually job hunting right now. So I've got time for calls like this, which is great. But yeah, thank you for putting this together because I actually have been thinking about it a lot lately. The last role I just interviewed for this was something they were really honing in on, like how do you do an executive level CAB versus just, a regular one. So very helpful and timely. Thanks.
Yeah, and I lead a cab as well, so I can definitely share a little bit. Would love to hear what you've done in the past as well.
Great. Thank you.
See, Cameron, you are next. All right. Well, if you're not up for introducing yourself, that is okay. Leanne, can I ask you?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Leanne. I am a community events coordinator for Jane Software. I am one member of a team of two who is the other community events manager. And we're currently planning a lot of events internally for our team. But moving forward into the future, we're really looking to plan events for our community members. So I am here just to kind of learn and absorb some information and yeah, see what you have to share.
Great, thank you. Welcome. And I think that's a great set or that's a side thing to think about as well is right. We're talking primarily about events for customers, but it's really not that different from planning an internal event. And some events are sort of equally for the internal attendees as they are for the customers that might be there. Jennifer, can I ask you to just tell us kind of who you are and what drew you here today?
Sure. So Jennifer Schmitz, I lead customer advocacy at Hitachi Vantara, and we are interested in putting together some events to target C level, which is not a target audience that we're very comfortable and familiar with at this point. So looking to figure out some good, I guess, best practices at really targeting that level within the organization and some ideas on how to kind of kick it off. We're just started talking about it, so it's brand new.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining. And also just blanket apology. They are ripping up the street in front of my house. There are jackhammers and bulldozers and everything. So hopefully it's not too loud. But if you start to get a lot of interference, just let me know and I will see if I can find a quieter spot in the house. So let me go ahead. I did put together a few slides. So again, hopefully this is really just a guide that we can use the conversation, not something I'm necessarily hoping to make into a formal presentation. But I think to me, like the guiding principle of these types of executive events is like more is more, right? Doing something that just goes that little extra step that throws in that extra something is what really elevates an event from something that was, maybe standard to something that felt really special and makes the attendees feel particularly cared for. So I think for these types of events, like even more so than any other event, the goal is so important, right? If you don't really know what you're trying to do, it's very difficult to pick the right type of event and to get the right people there to get the right outcomes that you're looking for. So like thinking through things like, what is our goal? Are we really trying to move pipeline, right? Whether that's through new deals, whether that's we really need these existing customers to talk to these prospects or to talk about, somebody using feature A to talk to somebody that's looking to expand into that. Like, do you really need those conversations to happen? Maybe you need conversations to happen between your internal teams and a customer. So if those are the goals, or are you really more trying to build a relationship and build the attendees like impression of you, right? What do they think? How do they regard your brand or regard some of the people that they might be working with day in and day out? Are you really trying to improve that relationship? Oh, hey, Cameron, welcome back. And no worries. And yes, coffee. No, I do not want anybody uncaffeinated here. So welcome, and hopefully we can help you feel more confident as you get started. So yeah, so thinking about, right, what are you trying to do is really going to guide the key decisions that you're going to make. So as you think about like, how big should this event be? How many, right? Do we want something where we are in a private, completely private space and it's just us? Do we want to be part of a larger event? Is that sometimes it's great to feel like you're part of something bigger, right? So thinking through some of those things. And then again, do you want it to be conversational? Do you want it to be really activity based? Is something to think about. And then think about how you're going to measure it to make sure, again, that you're asking for a big investment when you're talking about budget for these types of events. So are you going to be able to report back and say, hey, we got the right people in the room. They were engaged, they were excited, and look, here's the impact that we had. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but those are some of the things that I would be thinking about. So just some really high level, and I think after this, maybe we can pause here and just brainstorm or talk about different types of events that you've either been to or seen or run, or the different creative ideas out there. So I think of these in a couple of big buckets, right? So one is like a big ticket event. And so this is, we're going to have a suite at a sporting event, whatever major league sports ball team lives near you or is interesting to your customers, right? Or we're going to have a suite or a pack of tickets to a concert, and maybe build something really cool around that. I have a colleague who took a bunch of our customers to a Billy Joel concert and put together sort of a package where they were able to go into the locker room. It was held at a stadium, so they were able to kind of see some of that backstage space, and then have some great seats to watch the concert. So something like that. Whether you want something where people are really working together and doing something, right? So are you learning how to cook something or learning mixology? Or we also did a cool event with Porsche in Atlanta where you get to like drive around in race cars, right? So something that's a little bit more of that activity based event, or something that's more of a party, right? And again, you can kind of scale this up or down depending on the number of people. So I hosted a private chef dinner for our CAP where we had, it was a dedicated, our own event space. We had a chef who worked at a bunch of Michelin star restaurants come, and he cooked for us. He presented all the dishes. We had a sommelier give us a wine pairing for each one as well. And so it was just a really cool sort of scaled back experience. If you have a bigger group, you could still do, a larger party at some sort of a high-end venue. I think that's where it really makes a difference when people say, oh, I got to be in whatever venue, in our own private thing. So before we go on, I think maybe this is a good place to stop and invite a little bit of either questions, but also conversation, and let other folks share things that you've tried that worked or didn't work that you wanted to share with the group.
I had a question. Here, I'll turn my camera on so you're not talking to a black square. Hey, everybody. So you mentioned doing concert tickets and things like that for a select group of customers. How do you define the customers that you invite to that? And are you ever concerned about anti-bribery or any kind of those sort of parameters around events like that? How do you manage those two things?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess there's two layers. So one on the side of like, is this too much, right? Essentially, are we giving something too big? There are certain customers we have to be really thoughtful about what we're offering them, right? So we don't, we are not able to take some of our public sector customers, for example, to, to a Billy Joel concert and a whatever. We're not able to do that for them because they're not allowed to accept it. And so we certainly are mindful of what customers have rules about what they can and can't accept, and making sure that we are making invitations like according to what they can accept from us. So we don't want to look like we are either running afoul of anybody's rules or trying to run afoul of those rules. So we're definitely conscious of that. And then I would say, in terms of who else do we invite, it's a very collaborative process with our account teams. And so we're looking at, typically we're looking at who's local. So something like the cab is a little bit of an exception where people would travel in for it, but otherwise we generally are looking at, people within an hour or two radius of wherever the event is going to be. And so what we'll do is kind of look through all of those different customers and try to figure out, well, who has maybe a renewal coming up that we want to make sure that we're getting some really good quality time before that happens, right? Or who has a big expansion deal, or sometimes we'll look at who can we put together in the same room, right? Like we know, oh, this customer is considering this type of expansion, and here's somebody who did that last year. And so it's not necessarily a formal reference call, but hey, if they happen to end up sitting next to each other, it's probably going to come up and they're going to have a conversation. And so we try to be strategic about some of those types of opportunities as well. And sometimes that's customer to customer. Sometimes the event might have a mix of customers and prospects. But we'll try to put that together. And then we also think about who's going to be there internally. And is that the right, somebody that's going to be impactful, whether that's because it's, their relationship manager or somebody that they're talking to, or that's maybe trying to get them to sign the renewal or the expansion, or if that's an executive and making them feel valued, that, oh, I went to this thing and the CTO or the CEO or whoever thought that it was worth their while to come and meet me and talk with me and listen to me. So we try to think a lot about that as well, and making sure that we have like the right connections both between the attendees and then with the attendees and our internal folks as well.
Makes sense. Our executive vice president of sales goes through every single table that we have set up, and he handpicks who sits next to whom based on their strategy and which customer aligns best with which executive based on what their objectives are. And he's got it all in his brain. And I'm so glad he's the one that has to go through and do all of that.
Yeah, gets a little dicey sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I think that's also where, again, thinking about what the goal is kind of guides the type of event, right? So something like a concert, there's actually not a lot of opportunity for people to talk to each other. And so that's a really great, like, feel good, feel valued type of experience. But unless you build something around it, you might not get as much conversation between your attendees or with your attendees as you would at something that is even like a lot of sports are slower paced, right? There's a lot of something happens, we stop the clock, we're waiting around in the suite and we can have a conversation. So it just tends to be a little bit more slow paced, or obviously something that's more of a dinner or a party where conversation is like what there is to do. And the activities, I would say, can kind of fall somewhere in the middle, right? If you're working together on something, that can obviously be a real bonding experience as people are trying something together. And even if that's like, hey, we were trying to make this fancy thing and it was a total disaster and we burned it and whatever, like that's still a memory that they will take with them and have a little bit more of a connection to. The race car thing was something that was a little bit less conversational because you can only fit so many people in a race car. And so in most cases, it was just the professional driver and the one person at a time. And so then people could talk while they were waiting and talk about their experiences together, but they didn't necessarily have that like shared in the moment experience.
Did you have anything sort of post racing event so that you could cultivate the conversation later? Like, was there a meal afterwards or, okay, so they had the opportunity at some point. That's typically what we do. We'll usually have some sort of activation that usually it's around our executive events that we're hosting. So there'll be some sort of like activation that they can do, something that keeps them busy. And then afterwards, there'll be like a really high-end dinner or something like that, where they have that opportunity to connect peer to peer. So we try to do a little bit of both, at least at Manhattan.
Yeah, and I think often too, we're trying to think about like what's the hook, right? Because if you're especially if you're thinking about executives, they're very busy. They often have they're like reasonably well resourced on a personal level, and so if they want to have a nice meal, that's something they can just do, right? Or if they want to attend a concert, they can probably just do that. And so we try to think about what is sort of special enough that it will still be a draw. And so, yeah, they might buy a ticket to go to that sporting event, but would they be in a suite? Like, probably not, right? Or would they have had the opportunity to see, a backstage area? Probably not. And so we try to really think about that, like what would be interesting enough and sort of compelling enough that it's not something that's easy for somebody to go out and do on their own, even if they have the financial resources available. Anybody else have thoughts or experiences they want to share or questions that may have sparked?
I can just say that, so we've started doing executive dinners recently, and really just like as the team is traveling for meetings with prospects and whatnot, we're also coordinating these higher end dinners. But I really like your idea about getting strategic about how we set people up. We have our CEO going to each of these dinners, but I'm just now like getting pulled into them, but I'm not sure if they've been super strategic about this person should sit next to this person and this person should be over here and that. So I'm definitely going to bring that up for our next one coming up in September and see if they can coordinate that while they're in town.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think in that case too, the CEO is in a lot of ways the draw, right?
Mhm.
And so maybe you don't have a rock star or whatever, but the CEO kind of is that function of that's the thing that's going to make it worth their while for somebody to not have dinner with their family that night and instead to come and have dinner at your event, right? Is I'm going to get a chance to have this FaceTime with the CEO to list out all of my hopes and dreams for your product, and have this like very direct personal audience, and then also the feeling that afterwards we had dinner together. Now I feel like I can pick up the phone and call you when I have something I want to discuss later on. Awesome. So just thinking through to like, this is my attempt to put together what actually makes a high-end event special, right? And so one, I think we've talked about a little bit, which is that exclusive access. This is as close as possible to a money can't buy on your own opportunity. This is something that is outside of what I normally do. And it's also something that's with the people that I want to be with. And so sometimes it's interesting, we find that customers can be that draw for each other too. Like maybe there's somebody in their industry that they're going to be a little bit starstruck about or really interested to hear what that person is doing. And so they may come kind of for FaceTime with each other as much as they do for the event itself or for seeing us. I think the attention to detail, I mean, obviously when people are coming to a high-end event, it's important that all of those little things are just taken care of so that it feels really seamless for them, right? So you want to make sure that they're coming in and the name tag or the place card is printed and their name is spelled correctly and there's clear direction on where to go and there's a place to hang your coat and there's all of those just little details. And we try to think through things like if if it's a parking situation, right? If it's something other than just, oh, there's a big parking lot, like, do we have a parking pass for you? Do we have your name on a list so that you can very quickly be escorted away from a crowd and given, the VIP treatment? Do you have whatever you need to access, maybe there's an open bar or something like that. So we try to really think through all of those details and make sure that we're like one step ahead all the time. So that we're giving that information before customers have to ask about it. And then we're making sure that when they're at the event, they feel really taken care of and everything is done well, right? If they said, hey, I have this dietary restriction, we're going to just make sure that the meal that ends up in front of them is the meal that aligns to their needs without them having to ask for it again, all that kind of stuff. Executives, we talked a little bit about, but again, I think that is so important, and it shows customers how much you're valuing the event, right? And their presence there when you have your executives taking the time to come and to meet with them. And then thinking about what makes it a moment that they're going to think about and talk about after they leave the event and maybe outside of work, right? So is it something that like they're going to want to brag about a little bit on Instagram, right? Or share with their friends, or talk about, hey, this one time, I did this thing and it was really cool. Or I got to sit next to this CEO when we were at this football game, and, whatever it is. I think just thinking about what would make it compelling and exciting and something that they're going to want to talk about, because that way, hopefully they have people in their industry that they are friends with. Most people do. And so they may put something on Instagram that's not really about you at all, but just says, hey, thanks company for giving me this cool experience. And then, oh, bye Cassie, thank you for joining. And then everybody will see that and have that little bit of brand pop for you as well. And then the follow-up, which again, I think it always sneaks up on me. I know I always am thinking about it, and then somehow it always sneaks up on me. So making sure that you have a really clear plan around what are we going to do at the end? Is there either, some sort of takeaway or piece of swag that they're going to take from the event? Is there, oh, thanks for joining, Jennifer. Or is there something that you're going to send out afterwards, even if it's just a thank you so much for attending, just making sure that you have those pieces in place and that they feel on par with the level of your event overall. It doesn't feel like an afterthought to the customer. And then this is my last slide that I built, but just thinking about like how to sell it internally, right? Because it's expensive. It costs a lot of money to do a really nice event. And so I think sometimes it can be a hard sell, but it can also be a really good investment. So I think, first and foremost is just to be really loud about what you're doing and what the results are. Because I think sometimes I anyway tend to be like, oh, everybody will know what a great event it was and it will kind of speak for itself. And that's not always true. And I think it's also not something that people are always able to put together all those pieces on their own. So making sure to share out after, hey, we had this amazing event. It was at this really cool venue. We did this really cool thing. This is who came. We had, whatever customers you had, and I would list them out and say, we had this person and this is their role. We had that person, this is their role. And I would kind of, say, we had these customers, these prospects, these partners, whatever it was. And these are the internal people and why the different internal people were there and how they mapped back to those customers that were there, I think can be really helpful. And then that's also an opportunity where you can talk about some of the connections that might have been made, or I overheard these two customers having a conversation or whatever it was. Gathering all that feedback, right? So a lot of times maybe there's a formal survey, but a lot of times, especially for smaller events, there isn't really, but there are all these little things that you can look for, right? So did they send a text or a Slack or an email to their account manager afterwards saying how awesome it was and thank you for including me? Did they bring it up on their weekly call? Did they, mention it in like anywhere? I think being resourceful and kind of combing through, right? Searching in Slack for the name of your event or the venue that you are at, or searching if you have a call recording tool, right? Like searching those transcripts and just trying to find all those little moments that pop out that say, hey, the customer really valued their experience and is glad that they came. And then like the big piece, right? This is was it worth it piece is, what did it lead to? Right. And this is, I think, sometimes the hardest, but because you're not going to very often be like, well, the customer came and while they were there, we texted them the DocuSign and, I mean, maybe once in a while, but usually it doesn't work quite that quickly. But to be able to say, we actually got a follow-up conversation with somebody that we've been chasing, or we got this, this customer that's been on the fence to hear from another customer what a great experience they had, or we opened up something. Maybe they were having a conversation with either somebody internally or another customer, and they heard something and they said, oh, that sounds really cool. We should be looking into that. And all of a sudden you have a whole new expansion opportunity that wasn't even on your radar. Or maybe it's just that you're able to kind of progress that deal that was already open, but making sure that you're able to highlight all of those things. And then down here, I just pulled a quote. This literally showed up in Slack this week from one of our expansion sales folks, and basically just saying, hey, I've been trying to connect with this person for years. She wouldn't respond to me. I don't even think she's been to the event yet, but she was invited to a high-end event. I think she's being taken to the US Open. And all of a sudden, we're engaged and we're having the conversation. And so I think it's really important to be capturing all of those pieces, and that, yeah, it's not that she's going to come to the event and that's going to be the reason that she signs or doesn't sign the expansion contract. But I think it is important to recognize the role that the event plays in building that relationship and even creating the opportunity to have the conversation at all and to demonstrate the value to her. This one, I'm especially curious again to hear what others are doing, because I think measurement for events can be really hard. And sometimes it feels a little bit like hand wavy, or we end
It's
up
hard to
saying,
quantify events and relationship building
yeah,
in tangible numbers, but something that I was just thinking about as you were talking about selling your strategy, sometimes you don't have to necessarily host the entire event yourself. We find it pretty successful to do ancillary events on top of other industry trade shows that are going on. So like, for example, for us, NRF is a big deal for us. It's National Retail Federation. It's a huge trade show that hundreds of thousands of people come to. That might be egregious number, but a lot of people show up to this industry event. And we always do what we call the Future of Retail dinner, which is a separate, private, exclusive dinner at a very high-end venue. And we invite very select people that are already going to be there. So it's not a cost to them. It's less of a cost to us rather than getting them somewhere. So that's something to consider for industries that you are looking at for trade shows and things like that. Helps cut that down a lot. And then you can quantify who showed up and then what came out of it. That becomes a lot easier to do.
yeah, that's a great idea. And you've kind of a captive audience.
They're already there. They're already talking about it. All you have to do is wine and dine and charm them and then capture their email. And then there you go.
Yeah. And I know sometimes, like, I don't know about the NRF, but I know at things like Dreamforce, it's actually can be really difficult to even get a dinner reservation. And so
Yeah, you have to do it early. You got to plan. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like
So
depending on vendors to feed you.
Yeah, we've got,
Otherwise,
I think we have the first half of the year, we have 3 events that I know of that are industry trade shows that we try to buddy up with and do either, some sort of an event within the event or like a panel or something like that we can kind of get ourselves kind of interjected into. And so we're looking at on the back half of the year, building out something that we can kind of attach to. But yeah, that's our big things in the first half of the year is trade shows. And then of course our own conference, which is so expensive to do. So we try to maximize as much as we can out of that. And we do.
awesome. The other thing we've started to do some of is co-hosting events with partners. And we'll say, hey, we'll bring, X number of people and you bring X number of people. And typically it's, people that we're working with that we think are a good mutual fit, right? So we'll bring customers that we have that we think maybe could benefit from our partner, and they'll do the same. And it's been a really nice way, again, to get to share some of the costs and the planning lift. And then also we get to really cross-pollinate across a slightly larger group of people, and hopefully it's a win for everyone. Well, that's everything I prepared. I'm happy to stay on in chat. I am happy to let everybody go. I know everybody is running between meetings. I guess it's up to you guys what you would like to do with the next 20 minutes or so.
No, I think this was like a super helpful kind of like foundation building for me, who's now kind of like stepping into events in the interim while we don't really have a more junior person to do any planning or any of the like brainstorming behind stuff. So yeah, I picked up a lot of ideas. We only did one executive dinner so far. So this is our second one coming up in September. So it's like learn from that and then like learn from others and add it into the second one. So I think that'll be great, especially that like measurement piece. And not only the measurement piece, but just like amping up the event to begin with. I don't know if a lot of our other teams know that these things are even going on, and just that we're even trying to kind of push some of these executive relationships. So it'd just be good visibility and awareness. And then kind of just like tracking my team and what they're doing and how they're talking about it also, just to see if that helps drive more and more success as we do them. So I appreciate it. Both of you, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise and just kind of like helping guide me as I'm diving in. So I appreciate it.
We have to hand feed our sweet little account owners how to really serve this up to I mean, they know their customers well enough and who to invite and things like that, but we really have to do a lot of the legwork for them in order to get that return back from them. So my biggest advice is to just arm them as best as you can, even if you think it's down into the minutia, they need it. It helps you help them.
Sure. Yeah, that's the one thing about like customer marketing is that I always forget, but then other people also, I don't think, realize is 50% of this job is internal management of others and just making sure you guys know the programs that are going on. And then the other 50% is actually getting it out there and actually doing the marketing. So
Absolutely. I think too, once you build the muscle a little bit internally, you'll find more and more, like once somebody, if like our account manager has been to an event, often, right, it goes really well and they realize, oh, I went to that, I had 3 people there that I'm, working with in these ways, and all of a sudden my relationship is so much better. My deal that I've been trying to get them to sign has moved forward. And so once they start to see the impact of those types of events and of coming, then they're going to be more excited to go and more interested in thinking about, well, who in my book would I like to get there and would I like to get a little bit of FaceTime with? And so they start to get it, I think, once they've been to 1 or 2 events, or they start hearing from their peers, hey, I went to this event and that's what really like moved the needle. I think sometimes we see even in the write-ups that come through every time a new deal is signed, our account team will write up a little bit about sort of how the deal went. And so when you start to see, oh, we engaged with them at this event, and then people see where that is and how it really impacted that process. And then all of a sudden they're super excited to come and to get their customers there as well.
We start looking at buying committees too, on top of our sales opportunities and who's actually involved in those deals, who's the decision maker, who's the influencer. And then we use that sometimes to help build out our invitation lists who we want to invite to these things. And that also helps us to kind of quantify the response to that. What did we get out of this person being there? Can we totally prove that they bought because they went to the dinner? No, but it does help us sort of say, hey, they went to these 4 different events over the course of the year. This is how much interaction we've had out of them. And this is how much they've influenced because of our influence on them. So more things to think about, but that's just kind of how we approach it here.
Like that. Yeah, that's another, because we've also, that team has also started doing a lot better customer data tagging in Salesforce. So getting the influencer advocate champion, like, and just understanding our internal definition of that. So yeah, they've started doing that. So that also helps with invite lists. Great call out.
Oh, that's awesome. You have people helping you do that. I have to go in and flag everybody. Like, that's me too.
And that's something actually that I think we've improved on quite a bit in the last year, but is the tracking. And so making sure that every event is in Salesforce and we're putting in afterwards who came, who no showed, who read, all those pieces. Who did we invite, but they said no. We start to track all of that, because then you can more easily see, oh, the people that came to this event, they represented, X million dollars in current open expansion deals. Well, that's cool, right? You really start to build that credibility, I think, in a way that if you're thinking about it purely as, hey, that's nice that they came. And I think sometimes, especially for people that don't work in this world, they are like, yeah, that's cool, but they don't really understand the level of impact that it can have on the relationship.
That's a really good way to also fight for more budget to do more events, because if you can showcase the value that you get out of your company gets out of it because this person showed up to this event and influenced this much pipeline, then that helps me make the argument, well, we got X amount of dollars out of that and we only spent X amount of dollars, so our delta's pretty good. See what I mean? So like, give me more money to do more things.
Sure. Well, I think that's right, depending on the size of your contracts. Like, the events are expensive, but right, if you spend tens of thousands of dollars on an event that brings in hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, like, that's pretty good return, actually, right, when you start to think about it that way. So I think, it's harder to justify if your contract value is like a $10 a month kind of subscription. But if you're talking about enterprise level agreements, it really is worth it from a pure like mathematical perspective.
That's a good point. We're a SaaS enterprise company, so our deals are pretty large just to begin with. So it might, to your point, be a little bit of a different approach if you're not a SaaS enterprise company, but when you're talking about, massive amounts of money for deals versus, a couple $1,000s for an event or whatever the case may be, then it's a good investment. But again, knowing where your budget lies and your contracts and your customers, you would just change that out to fit your narrative, however that would work for you, I think.
Also SaaS enterprise. So yeah, kind of the same thing. And like you guys were mentioning the tentpole events, we circulate ours around Adobe Summit. So we do some stuff, but we hire a whole separate events team during that time to do that. So it's like, I'm not even involved in that portion of it, which is, so it's all new. But yeah, so yeah, it is justifiable to make that budget.
And we do sometimes work either with an agency or, other contractors, or sometimes, you end up booking. So like the cab dinner that I did, I didn't hire the chef myself. Like, I went through an agency that does private chef dinners and has relationships with a bunch of people. And so, we definitely are willing to bring in and pay for a little bit of middleman assistance sometimes, and it's usually very well worth it, because yeah, we're also a very small team and there's just only so much that you can.
Did you get to do a tasting with the private chef?
We did. We had a whole 5-course meal.
So I will say, because we don't have a cab in the true sense of a cab, but we do have an executive experience track that we do at our user conference every year. And last year, we were not allowed to leave the venue. We had to stay on property in San Antonio, Texas, there's nothing there. I'm from Texas. I live here. I can promise you there was no other option. So we were on site the whole time. So we wanted to create this high-end experience while they were there. So we had to use the private chef from the hotel. He was very good. So it worked out. But then they didn't have a sommelier to go with it. So we were trying to do this whole like pairing situation with it. And one of the perks of having to do these events is, oh no, I have to do quality control and go test out this food and go test out this wine. So there's small perks for having to be the person that does all of those things
So you've got to
sometimes.
take one for the team,
Yeah,
right?
take the win.
Yeah.
Oh, but one of the cool things that we did do, and this is a good idea if you want sort of that like activation station within an event like that, we hired a vendor that came in and did custom leather goods. So they did like passports that have like little, they could have this little
Oh.
emboss. They could do like different words or their initials or whatever. The room smelled amazing because the leather was just like so fragrant. And this was a huge hit with all of our executives that attended. They were like, I can't take this all home with me. Can we have it shipped to our house? And the vendor we used shipped for them. They just placed their order on site. It was really, really cool. So if you ever want those details, I'm happy to share them with anybody. They were awesome.
That is very cool. I love that. We're always trying to think of something different and creative, and yeah,
And something they'll think about when they leave, right? So like now
Mhm.
every time they use their passports or they walk their dog, because I think we had some dog leashes that they could customize too. It's like they'll think about, oh, I got that at Momentum. That's our user conference. Like things like that, you know. I don't know how I'm gonna top it next year. We're going to Vegas though, so I feel like there's ways.
One thing I've been looking into for our holiday party is like a liquid nitrogen ice cream. And so they make it for you like to order. They've, different flavors, and that seems also pretty cool. And like it kind of, all the smokes in the room, and
We did that for our customer party
yeah.
at the user conference, and it was a huge hit too. It's really cool. Like that's a cool one. Highly thumbs up.
All right, awesome. Well, good to know that there's a good recommendation for it.
Yeah. Our events team is really good at finding those kind of activation things. I'm so glad that we do have an events team that is focused on that, and they're very creative. And that's actually how I got some of these ideas too. So I'm happy to pass those along. I'll just steal their ideas and give them to you.
Yes, please. I mean, I'm always trying to figure out, and I know our events manager is too, like what can we do that's cool, that's a little bit different, that that people are going to go home and talk about. I love the leather idea where you have something like physical and tangible that you're walking away with, and something that's useful, right? Something.
Yeah. And I liked the idea that they could ship from our event too, because some of these things, obviously your dog is going to have different sizes of like the collar. I think we had an iPhone case that they could also get customized. And so that was varying sizes too. So they could place orders for these things and have it shipped to their house. And they didn't have to give us their information. They could give it to the vendor. It's very secure. The whole thing was really, really cool. So highly recommend. The company is called Clayton and Kroom. So like if you ever need to send customized gifts for somebody, they don't do a great job of doing from a business perspective. So if like you pay for it out of like with your credit card and you need to expense it, like their receipts they're not real friendly with expenses, but they are a very cool gift to send to somebody. We also did glasses, like whiskey glasses that had the little leather wrapped around it, and that was customized with their initials as well. We gave that to our entire executive board. So lots of good ideas from that company. Highly recommend Clayton and Kroom. They're very good.
Opening up their website right now because
I wish it was smell-o-vision, honestly. Like it's so good.
And good to know about the expenses, because I'm also like, well, if I plan an expensive event, that's a lot of credit card points for me.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I was like, you guys, this is such a good thing. Oh, and then this is one too. They have like these little like decanters that you can get customized as well.
That's cool.
And they sent that to me as like a quality check. They were like, hey, we'll send you a gift. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I don't really drink like that, but I wanted to see what it came with. So
very cool. Wow. Are they based in Vegas?
no, I don't know where they're based, but they ship pretty much anywhere. It's probably a good question to ask where they're from. I don't know.
Oh, cool. Well, great. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, but they will send people to your event wherever it is. You just pay for their, their travel and their room. And they sent us 2 people, one person working the press that was embossing all of the leather, and then one person that was kind of doing orders and doing the like customer facing side of it. But they both were so friendly, very professional. Can't say enough good things about them. They were really good.
That's awesome. Wow, they have a lot of different things.
Yeah, the duffel bag that's like $1,000. My executive vice president of sales was like, can we get that one? And we were like, no, that's not in the budget, Bob. We can't be giving out $1,000 duffel bags unless you want to fund it.
I think that would be an excellent use of sales budget.
Yeah.
I like the luggage tags and the passport cases, though. Those look really cool.
Yeah, those were really cool. The glasses were really cool. They also have these big, almost like utility bags, but they're kind of, they almost feel like makeup bags a little bit, but they come in like different sizes, which I thought was really cool too. There's a ton of options. Really cool.
Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you both so much for coming and sticking on to the end. And I'm in the Slack, obviously. So if you want to keep the conversation going, please, feel free to PM me if you ever want chat about something. I'm always happy to.
Thank you so much for hosting.
Yeah, thanks. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.